Radio Hoopoo production is about Phyllis Virginia Daniels, popularly known as Bebe Daniels, who was a child star starting at the age of 10 weeks. At the age of 7, Bebe had her first starring role in film as the young heroine in A Common Enemy. At the age of 9, she was the first Dorothy Gale in the 1910 The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. At the age of 14, she was hired by a comedy producer for $5 a day to star opposite comedians in a series of one-reel comedies. Bebe's looks were somewhat exotic. She was born in Texas to an American father and a Colombian mother. She really wanted to be a dramatic actress, and so she accepted an offer from producer-director Cecil B. DeMille in 1919 and starred in the films Male and Female, playwright J.M. Barrie, Why Change Your Wife, and The Affairs of Anatole. She was a very popular actress, especially in the South. Bebe had a somewhat overbearing mother, and we can see this when Bebe was jailed when she was 20 years old in Orange County and called the Speed Girl. She was speeding in her American-made car and actually went to jail, and her devoted mother, Phyllis, went with her. She said that her car could go over 70 miles an hour, but in Orange County, she was pulled over for going over 50 miles an hour. She was somewhat elitist and said that if you live in a small town, I bet 56 miles per hour sounds awfully fast if you've never driven anything faster than a plow. Regardless of these comments, Judge Cox was a nice fatherly old gentleman to her and filled her cell with floral arrangements, allowed her Hollywood friends to visit her, and she spent 10 days in jail for the speeding, but this shows that Bebe was no stranger to the law and breaking the law. And when she was arrested, she actually wanted her uncle to bail her out of jail. I'm not sure who her uncle was, but it seems that in her family she was able to rely on them to get her out of tough situations. In this image, you can see that Abe Lyman and his orchestra from the Coconut Grove were playing for Bebe outside of her jail cell. The Coconut Grove is actually where her future husband, Ben Lyon, would meet his second wife in 1927, so it was a very popular spot in the 1920s. Ben Lyon was exactly the same age as Bebe, and he was a silent film star, very recognizable in Hell's Angels with Jean Harlow, directed and produced by Howard Hughes. He met Bebe on the comic circuit, and they had 90 weeks of touring together, but they fell in love and they were married and had an over 40-year marriage. Bebe and Ben married in 1930 when both of them were 29, and Bebe had a daughter, Barbara, in 1932. I believe Barbara was born in London, or the couple lived in London soon after her birth. Both Bebe and Ben became very involved in the BBC and all kinds of British productions, and so it was in England where they adopted their second child. According to a 1935 issue of Radio Pictorial, which was catered to a British audience, Bebe saw a photo of an orphan, and when she saw the photo, she decided that she needed to adopt the baby to be a brother to her daughter Barbara. This seems like sort of strange fare for Radio Pictorial magazine, which contains timetables of radio shows and also interviews, but it also did feature the royal family in 1935, so maybe it was more of a socially leaning production at that time. In 1934, when Bebe adopted her son Bryan Moore, who she renamed Richard, there were 3 major orphanages in London. London Foundling Hospital, shown here, was really dedicated to the care of children and very concerned with the weight of abandoned babies. And so many of their records are dedicated to how they cared for babies at the time. There was also the London Orphan Asylum, which was established by a philanthropist, Andrew Reed, in 1813 and expanded throughout the 1820s. The London Orphan Asylum operated as a boarding school for orphans, and it was charity-based. So I'm not sure Bebe would have seen an image from this school because the privacy of the students would probably have been respected, and the school was running on charity already. The next large orphanage in London at the time was the Jews Hospital and Orphan Asylum. This hospital actually started as a senior center for the poor Jews of England at the time, and then expanded to become an orphan asylum. It had a very different operating procedure. It allowed boarding of working house children who were not Jewish, and so it would accept children from all around England to be enrolled and versed in Judaism. So I think that with Ben Lyon's devout Judaism, this may have been where Bebe found her son, Richard. The United States Library of Congress actually has a remarkable collection of the Lyons family footage, and you can see in their footage of visiting Bryce Canyon with family that they have both the mothers, both Ben and Bebe's mother, but there are 3 children in the footage. A little girl, Barbara, a little boy who I think is Richard, and then another little boy who is unidentified in the film. And so it seems that the family had returned to the United States by 1935 to shoot this footage, and so I'm not sure if the Library of Congress's dates are accurate, but you can see that material, and I'll include a link. The Lyons family pretty much dove into show business together, and all 4 of them starred in a BBC show called Life with the Lyons, which was eventually made into a movie. Barbara was a successful singer, and Richard did many different things. He dabbled in singing, but eventually starred in various films in the 1960s, and then he became a photographer for the British Film Institute. You can see his marriage and engagement to dancer Angela Ferguson in these photos. They remained married until his death in 2013 in Wales. After appearing in over 200 films, Bebe retired from Hollywood in 1935. She was busy with her London and British life. It shows that she went to a fundraiser in Roehampton in 1950 for an orphanage, and she also was busy with her radio work. She suffered from a stroke in 1963 and withdrew further from public life, and then she suffered a second stroke in late 1970. In 1971, Bebe died of a cerebral hemorrhage in London at the age of 70. Her husband Ben kept in contact with many of his film friends from the 1920s, and one of these friends was Marion Nixon, who was a dancer at the Coconut Grove, and he met her in 1927 and then married her in 1972. In the 1940s, Lyon was working as a talent scout for 20th Century Fox, and he met Marilyn Monroe, then known as Norma Jean, in 1946. Lyon would say for years afterwards that he was the one who discovered Marilyn. It was him that gave her the name Marilyn Monroe, and he would coast on this for years. He came up with the name of Marilyn for Norma Jean from his fond remembrances of dancer Marilyn Miller, who was a Ziegfeld Follies girl, but also very pure, and she didn't really get contaminated by the dance scene. As for these claims that Ben Lyon created Marilyn Monroe, I seriously doubt them because Marilyn was getting feature shots by famous photographers in 1945. She was on the books as a model in 1945, and she was well on her way to stardom. So while Ben Lyon may have suggested the name of Marilyn for her, I don't think he created her. There's also a question of what Ben Lyon's relationship was with Marilyn. She revealed the following in her book titled My Story. I met them all. They were the very definition of phoniness and failure. Some of them were malicious and dishonest. However, they were the closest possible location to the movie theater. You sat there with them, listening to their deceits and plots, didn't you? 20th Century Fox had a chain of movie theaters known as Fox Theaters. In March 1979, Ben was vacationing with Marion on a cruise ship, and he suffered a heart attack off the coast of Honolulu and passed away.